Hi, now let's talk about socialism. Here we go. So, socialism is defined as certain productions like factories, utilities, natural resources should be owned by the public, workers, or the state instead of private investors. Now, a lot of the times, what happens in socialist countries is that these sectors tend to be owned by the state. I don't feel like that's a coincidence. Okay. Here are different forms of socialism that has been tried to be branded as good, even though I firmly believe that when a government tries to take over a private business that's owned by shareholders and people who've built the business, it shouldn't be. I feel like that's bad. I don't know. It just could be me. But do you really want to give the government more power? So here are other forms of socialism. Democratic socialism. I feel like that's a contradiction. Market socialism, state socialism. That's the only form of socialism. Okay, the word actually goes with socialism. Finally, I think I cracked up when I found this. Libertarian socialism. I'm just like, why? Libertarians don't believe in big government. Am I wrong? Okay, so essentially, the form of socialism that's being proposed in America, and frighteningly, a lot of Gen Zers are in support of, which scares me, and is why I'm covering this, is democratic socialism, where more social ownership and stronger social programs while keeping democratic elections and civil liberties. Again, I feel like this sentence is very loaded. More social ownership. I just hear the words government owned when I read those words. Stronger social programs. I feel like there has been very good intentions in the start of social programs. Some social programs are great and have provided such support for US citizens. Unfortunately, I feel like the system, it's been corrupted and there's a lot of flaws given to these social programs. I'm not saying that social programs are bad. I'm just saying that there should be more, that's what I'm saying, more accountability to audit these social programs and see if they actually work. Because some of the times I feel like a lot of these social programs tend to incentivize gaining the system rather than helping that person out for a little while, get back on their feet, and having that person be able to contribute to society, become successful. And there's a lot of nuances and there's a lot of external factors. Unfortunately, I feel like some social programs are incentivizing circumstances which the person originally qualifies for. You're incentivized to stay where you're at to gain those benefits from those programs rather than move forward. Those programs helped you for a little while, but now it's time to move forward and eventually get off those programs. Going back to the point, stronger social programs while keeping democratic elections. I feel like our elections are already pretty flawed. We've seen a lot of the fraud happen here in California, in LA, especially with the mail-in votes. I feel like there's been such a shift in terms of trying to make voting more accessible rather than making voting secure. I feel like there should be a shift and a focus into making our votes actually secure and verifying our citizenship and whether you are allowed to vote in elections. Civil liberties. I feel like socialism just stomps on civil liberties. Like, you're wanting to state run industries that have been previously privately owned and operate in the free market, you're stomping on civil liberties. You're taking someone else's business. You're taking away that ability for that employer to be able to make those decisions independently and be able to compete in the market rather than have it government owned. So it doesn't make any sense. This entire sentence is a contradiction. There's a lot of terms to kind of boggle your mind to make it sound very positive. Like, I've gone on the Democratic Socialist Party website probably enough times to the point where they think I'm a supporter of socialism. No, I'm not. So socialism is a system where productive property is owned by collective or publicly. It can take many forms. I feel like the umbrella term, like you're trying to please everybody, and trying to please everybody, you please nobody. I feel like and I've seen a lot of similarities between socialism and communism. Here we go. Communism typically believe in one-party governments and state-controlled economies. Does that sound familiar to you? Okay. Democratic socialists differ on how much should be publicly owned. Who determines that? Of how much should be publicly owned can be very tricky. I don't want the government determining how much should be publicly owned in sectors. I honestly think that TSA and the US Postal Service and the DMV, in my opinion, would be better run if they were all private companies. Because if it was privately owned and you had competing DMVs, they would try to innovate to gain your business. Thus, in innovation, they would try to gain customers and gain clients to that way to get your business instead of this one big entity where you have to go and you get lousy service because there's no incentivizing to gain you as a customer. So there's no point of improving customer service. In addition to that, they are advocating for partial ownership. Now, here's where a lot of people will they're going to leave the little sectors alone. They're going to leave restaurants and clothing stores and technology startups and small businesses in private hands. I don't believe you. Because first of all, technology is a very big sector, and it's very huge in our everyday life. It's going to come to a point where you're going to be so accepting into giving the government control of our energy sectors and our insurance and our healthcare and everything. You're going to get so used to it that one more thing isn't going to be a big deal because it's just one more thing on the plate of the government. It's the government's job to take care of us. And no, the government's job is to serve us. Correct. It is also our responsibility as American citizens to take care of ourselves. Yes, take care of our common man if you feel led to, with your own individual liberties, if you feel led to volunteer or donate to charity. That is your right as an American citizen to decide what to do with your money and how to steward it. What worries me, it's in the sentence of how much should be publicly owned. Who determines how much? The government will determine how much. Given the unsecure imbalance in our voter ID, I don't have that much confidence in decision being made. If we don't secure how our voting is now, we're going to end up losing the vote, and we're going to end up losing civil liberties one by one. We have to be very vigilant. We have to be watchmen when it comes to those things. Supporters argue public ownership they want to prioritize service over profit. I call bull. So in terms of prioritizing service over profit, you mean to tell me that you prioritize, in my opinion, that you believe that servicing everybody can't be hand in hand with profit. I personally believe that your dollars speak. There are a lot of people who vote by the dollar in terms of what companies you support and who you buy from. You're saying something. You're saying you're doing a good job. Here's my money. Here you go. That's a very simplistic way of saying that. In terms of keeping prices more stable, how many times do we have to go over this? Governments cannot price control. There is no such thing. Eventually, the market will speak. You cannot institute price controls, price ceilings, price floors in the market because the consumer will pay for it later. The market self-corrects slowly, incrementally, and naturally by the consumer. There's short-term relief, absolutely. In the long term, and I'm talking decades from now, generations down the road will pay for it. Unfortunately, we are paying for it right now because past generations have decided that price controls are in our best interest. It's like time and time again, there have been case studies where governments have tried to impose price controls and it has failed miserably. Can you please stop and let the market do its thing? Let the market do its job. Stop. Reinvesting revenue into the public. Again, if you can't be trusted with current currency, why would I give you more? The reinvestment situation in terms of here's all this cash we're going to get from these businesses that we seized as a government and reinvest it into the public. I live in California. There's a lot of dollars that have been reallocated to these so-called social programs. I have yet to see the fruits of that labor. I see a lot of money going into campaigns, allegedly. I see nothing about our roads being done correctly or the homeless population. I don't see any of those situations improving. Again, why would I trust you to run a private business that you want to publicly seize and own when you can't run the current agencies correctly? So critics argue, and I 100% agree, it reduces competition and innovation. Competition and innovation is a force to be reckoned with when it comes to human character. Oh, there's nothing that drives me more than a competitive spirit and being innovative. Doesn't that excite you? All the failures, you learn lessons from them and you learn new and different ways on how to adapt and how to not only become a better person, but become, whatever the case may be, become a better steward in time and customer service and whatever your job is. You learn to innovate. You learn to grow as a human being. And I think that's beautiful. Giving that up to a state ownership where, oh, well, I'll take this and you can just go do something else. It doesn't incentivize me to work harder. It doesn't light a fire under me to work harder, to be innovative, to go into that field. It creates bureaucratic inefficiencies. Of course, if it's a state-owned, government-owned, it's going to be very bureaucratically bloated. I mean, come on. Like the lines at the DMV, I can't imagine gasoline stations, hypothetically, allegedly, being owned by the state. How much of a nightmare would that be? If there's a gas shortage, you don't have to compete with other gas stations and everything's state-owned. You essentially run into gas rationing because you're forced to use less gas because the government has sanctioned it that way. Come on. And then to increase political influence over business decisions. People don't like politics, but they want it in business. I don't get that. When I plugged in the progressive socialist argument, well, there's similarities. What are the differences? I didn't really see any differences. Here we go. Okay, view of capitalism. Progressive generally accepts, but wants to regulate and reduce inequality. How would you regulate it? Doesn't reducing inequality automatically puts you in a spot of putting ceilings and floors on a market? Socialism often believes that capitalism creates structural inequality and should be changed more fundamentally. I don't see the difference in how they view these. It's literally worded differently. It means the same thing. Change capitalism to something that it originally was never set up to be. They believe that it's structurally unequal. What is structurally unequal about it? If you let the market do its job, the market is going to do its job. It flows by dollars. Let the market do its thing. The main goal, to make the existing system fair. Any guesses on who said that? Progressive side. Socialist side. Increase public, worker, or collective control over the economy. I feel like I've heard the word collective so many times used in progressive that I'm kind of like, yeah, that's okay. Again, as a progressive, how would you make the system fairer? You would probably agree with the socialist side. Businesses mostly remain privately owned as a progressive, mostly. What does mostly determine? 75%? 50%? Like what would mostly be, and what sectors? Like there's very broad strokes in terms of progressive argument that it doesn't make any sense. You try to paint it as this flower and sunshine and daisies. It's not. It's a nightmare to be lenient, to be dependent on a large government entity. And then the socialist side of how they view businesses is that some major industries may be publicly or worker owned. They love using the word worker owned. Here's what you're going to do. If you really want to be a part of some companies, buy a share of stock in a company. You get emails on how to vote on what that company does. It doesn't have to be this, the government decides what major industries should be publicly owned. How would they be publicly run? I feel like that would just be, oh, it's state run now. Or worker owned. And I feel like it would be appointed by state. That feels wrong. Because you're appointing people that don't have a personal interest in the company, that the government had a hand in you being part of the company. There's no incentivizing, there's no real fire to innovate and to stay competitive in a market where the government has taken control of the business. Government role. They want to regulate the market and provide social programs. Now, again, the hot thing is social programs. They love saying that they want more social programs, more social programs. It's just to kind of get you in the door. That way other agendas can be done. I honestly believe that, in my opinion. Regulating markets have never worked out. Can you read about Russia or China, communist China? In the socialist camp of their government, the socialist view of government roles is that you may own or control key industries and expand economic democracy. I feel like the term economic democracy is very, very fishy and suspicious because I believe we already live in a sort of economic democracy. Again, you decide what to do with your money. You vote for that company based on where you spend your money. It's so hard about this. Progressives' approach is to reform capitalism. Can we let capitalism do its thing without interfering with the market? That'd be sweet. The socialist view on the approach is to transform parts of the economic system. You want to impose more government control, like more price floors, more price ceilings. When we've seen that hasn't worked, more currency that isn't backed by any hard currency and causes inflation in the long term and leads to disaster. I don't get it. The DSA states, this is where it gets really disturbing. The new democratic constitution bases that they want a single federal legislator instead of the current House and Senate structure. Proportional representation rather than the winner-take-all elections. I am not for this. I believe in the three branches of our government system because it was designed that way. It was designed for those checks and balances. It has gotten ugly politically over this past decade, I want to say. At the same time, you shouldn't give absolute power to any one body. Once you eliminate that current checks and balances in terms of checking power, you're done. You have ruined the great democratic experiment that this country was founded upon. You ruined it. You've turned it into a country that I won't be able to recognize. And that's disturbing. That disturbs me. I encourage you to do your research on the Democratic Socialist Party and actually read what they're saying, because there's a lot of words that try to paint this pretty picture of this quote unquote idyllic world where everyone gets a free check and everyone receives healthcare and everyone does this and everyone. It paints it as this rosy picture when in fact you're surrendering your civil liberties, your choices as an American citizen of what to do with your money, what to do with your property, in exchange for having the government run it. I don't know about you, but I don't want a government gas station. I sure as heck don't want the government owning more businesses and more sectors when they can barely manage the ones they own now. This has been fun. That is my take on the Democratic Socialist Party. I will be back with more on going over the props in the November election for California. I will be back with more. Stay tuned. Have a good one. I'll see you later. This has been Fault Lines, California, where I go over the cracks of what is actually happening that affects this state, or what I kind of see as a problem going down the road. This has been fun. I'll talk to you next time.